And Victoria's here. Is that right, Victoria?
Hi.
Hi. And you're in you're in South Nigeria. Is that right?
Yes, Nigeria.
Yeah. So we have a great international, and Caitlin's coming in. Hi,
Hey,
Caitlin. Good to see
hi, great to
you.
see you.
Yeah.
Buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna sit over here, I think, today.
Neil Ravo. Neil Ravo. Is that right? Great. All right.
We've got the VR lady, Angelina.
And Steph is here.
It's great.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hi, Steph.
there's so many nice faces in this.
Yeah. It's so good to see you guys.
Likewise.
Yeah,
Such a
wow.
nice
Well, thank you, gosh, for coming. Super exciting to
Yeah.
be here.
Isn't this
This is-
neat?
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
great. It's
Yeah.
just so great.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So you tell us, Laurel, when you want to get going, and we'll have
just
we
giving
won't
it
see.
another minute. We should be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we
So
don't.
how's everybody doing today? How
Yeah.
about some
Good.
emojis?
Yeah.
Yay.
Good. Good. Yeah. Really good.
Nice.
Am I rattled yet? My voice still okay?
Yep, your voice is still okay. Do you want to do a quick re-enter just to make sure?
Yeah. Let
We
me
can
do
clear
a
the
re-entry
dust
and make sure.
bunnies.
Yeah. Clear
Beautiful.
the dust bunnies.
Would you
Yeah.
like me to do
Okay.
the same, or should I just?
No, you should be okay. With the Rift, it's rarely a problem, but it just is if it is.
Okay.
So I'm so thrilled you all are here. Wonderful. We're going to get started here as soon as Tom gets back. And I'm going to start the intro while he is coming back here. So I want to welcome you all here to this amazing experience in this beautiful Victorian library. I mean, is this the most beautiful world? What a great event space. And this is all thanks to the amazing Mark from the News and Updates. It's over there and the beautiful, vast looking classy over there in the corner. He made this amazing event space for us. And I want to thank you all for being here and for not only just for being here and supporting our guest speaker and Tom Furness, but also the Virtual World Society. This is an amazing organization that has been changing the world of education and immersive technologies for a very, very long time, and we are looking forward to next year having it completely explode and really, really just do great changing with the world. So my name is Rel or Laurel, and I am a co-founder with Daniel Dabowski Bryant of Educators in VR, and my amazing team is here as well. Donna McTaggart is up there on the balcony, and we've got Mark over here, and I've got Lita, who's with our Cultural Heritage and Preservation, and the amazing Dr. Angelina Dayton, who's with the who's the VR lady with students in VR, and Caitlin Krause is here, who's doing amazing things in coaching and teaching and education and everything else. And she's also working with Tom with the Virtual World Society. And I know I've left out some other amazing people that are here, but I want to thank you for being here and helping to support this event. So I'm going to introduce to you the incredible Tom Furness.
Oh, wow.
Of the Virtual
Incredible.
World Society, who's classified as the grandfather. I just call him my hot boyfriend and founder of VR. I love teasing you.
Speaking of the hot ones, yeah, okay.
I know. Absolutely amazing, Tom Furness. So welcome.
Thank
Your
you.
turn, my friend.
Thanks, everyone. Wonderful. Thank you for the. I can't get my screen down here, my little monitor thing, so you'll have to change the slides for me.
Actually, Mark,
disappeared.
can you retrade places and you help with that? All right, Mark. There he goes. Mark is going to be. I'll be over here. Oh, we don't have slides, Tom. I forgot.
We don't have slides.
We don't have slides.
We should.
Yeah, we
No, we have
have
slides.
material.
We have.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we
All
have
right,
some
then.
slides. Yeah, we have
Okay.
slides because I just ran through them a minute ago.
All right, then go for it.
Okay, but I don't have the thing here. You
No,
go show
Mark
the
will
slides for
change.
me.
Yep,
Okay,
Mark will change
okay,
it.
Mark. Good, good. We'll get organized here. Now, you introduced me as this whole grandfather guy, but I'm going to introduce the godmother person of
Yay!
VR. I think we're even related, aren't we?
I
Nonny?
think somewhere.
Related. Isn't that wonderful? Now, the interesting thing about being a godmother rather than a grandfather is a godmother can be any age, whereas sort of a grandfather is this old guy, right? So,
Well,
Nonny, you're the youngster here in the crowd.
I don't know. The godmother really means your goal is to try to nurture other people along the
Yeah.
path. And that's really where the nickname came from. Wasn't so much as an immersive thing as when I was at Sundance with the piece on Syrian refugees, there was an Engadget reporter, and first somebody came in and went, oh yeah, Nonny was here with Palmer Luckey back, in 2012, and Palmer was sleeping on her hotel room couch, helping, make the goggles. And then somebody else came in and said, oh, Nonny started my career. A guy named Michael Murdoch was like, oh yeah, Nonny started me in VR. And then somebody else came by and said, oh yeah, Nonny was the one. Chris Melk was like, oh, she introduced me to VR. And then a couple people did that in the space we were in Sundance. And the Engadget reporter went like, God, you're like the godmother. And then he printed that. And that stuck.
And it
that
took.
And it took. And that's how the godmother nickname started. And for better or for worse. But I do take very, very seriously the idea that this is a journey that I've been lucky enough to go on, and that I feel very compelled to see if I can help other people to the best of my abilities. I mean, obviously, there's only so many hours in the day, and I've been raising 2 kids throughout this, and I finished my PhD throughout this, and so sometimes I'm not able to give people the attention I would like to, but I have a deep, resounding commitment to see if there's ways that I can help.
Bless your heart. Well, let's bring up that next slide, Mark. There you go. That's what Nonny looks like in real life or in physical space versus virtual space.
Right.
But Nonny is I haven't done a proper introduction, but I think pretty much everybody knows who you are. But Nonny is certainly a journalist, and she is now an immersive journalist, and certainly a VR pioneer and an entrepreneur and a mother, and she has already made amazing contributions to this whole community. Now, I don't know if you heard that or you picked up on what she said to begin with, but she was the motivation behind the original Oculus. So why don't you back up a little bit and tell that story, Nonny, because that's really an important thing, that if it hadn't been for Nonny, we wouldn't be here wearing these things today. Okay?
Well, that's a big statement. But let me tell you how the story went. This is what happened. I had this dream of making a more immersive experience to tell a news story. Journalists are always trying to create what Martha Gellhorn, who was a World War II reporter, she called it the view from the ground. And I always quote her when I talk about, like, when I was a correspondent for Newsweek, we'd do these cover stories on, and the point was to try to get the audience to have a view as if they're there. And I really got excited about the idea of that happening in VR. And the first piece I made, really, with an artist named Peggy Wild, was a virtual Guantanamo Bay prison in Second Life. And that was back in 2008. And that was based on a big documentary I'd done that had a Guantanamo Bay prison, which I cannot believe is still open. In any case, after that, I was lucky enough to be invited into the lab of the brilliant Mel Slater and Maria Sanchez Vives in Barcelona. Freedom of Information Act material on detainees being left in Gitmo and other camps in what they called stress positions. And at the time, people like Rumsfeld were at USC, but my director of the J School left, And I lost my fellowship because the dean thought I was nuts, and I think everybody else in the J school did too, trying to do journalism in VR. And but I was lucky enough that Mark Bullish let me keep working in the ICT lab there, because also I was in interim. I'd already applied to do my PhD and been accepted. And I was having to take a year off because they thought I'd be faculty and it would have been free, but now they had to raise funding for me. So he kind of knew I was still affiliated with the university, and he let me go in the lab. At that point, Palmer Luckey was kicking around like the lab intern. And what happened was, we had only goggles, which you might remember, Tom, called the Wide 5, and they were $50,000 a pair, right? $50,000 a pair. And when I made this piece and it got to Sundance, sorry, you guys, that's my dog sticking its nose in my hand. You know, when we got into Sundance, Bolus was like, "You can't take those out of the lab. There's no way. They're too precious. You can't take those to Sundance." So we had to build goggles. And, you know, Palmer at that time was already obsessed with goggle making. He, I guess, had the largest library he claimed, of independent goggle, prototypes and stuff in his garage. And we made this crazy pair of goggles. Now, the thing about Palmer, she couldn't do software. So there was a brilliant Thai fan who helped. And actually, our crossbow with somebody who I still love to work with, John Brennan. Some people also might know Bradley Newman. John Brennan, who teaches at Cal Arts, and it just he built the virtual camera for the Lion King. John Brennan's just a genius. So John actually helped build those goggles too. I just want to give credit to everybody. Yeah. But we had, but the motivation was they had to be ready in January for Sundance. And 9 months later, after that, working pair had this incredibly powerful effect at the event. I mean, like, it was crazy when John Brennan and I were like, what did we do, right? Because people were crying, and we had 5-hour waiting lines, and but after, Palmer was driving the truck for us and crashed in my hotel room, and then 9 months later he started Oculus Rift. So that's the long story of how
that's incredible. Yeah,
how the whole thing came about.
So really, it came about because you were trying to tell a story, and trying to tell a story that would be engaging and would basically grab people. And this is something that you really took a lot of risk in doing, because this was beyond the norm. And like you say, they pretty much thought you were a crackpot anyway by going in this direction.
They definitely thought I was a crackpot. Oh, they thought I was a total crackpot. But there you go.
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's back up way before you even went to Harvard and got involved in the early in your early career in journalism. What were you like as a kid? You grew up in California, in Venice, California.
Yeah.
So tell us what you were like as a kid.
Very eccentric. If in terms of like this changed, but I guess eccentric is not maybe the right word. I was eccentric too, but like here was an example. It was these things are difficult when you're trying to kind of push against the norm, right? It's always can be a little painful. And I remember, for example, I was invited to be part of this 6th grade class where we were with kindergartners and 6th graders, and that was before 6th grade started at middle school. And I loved it. And I had this pair of overalls in which I sewed triangles and squares and things so that I could teach them things through my clothing, right? And I was so proud of those things that I wore them for picture day. And the girls in the class were really mad that I was ruining their picture because I wasn't in a dress. And they actually wouldn't eat lunch with me anymore. But then I met my 2 best friends, and then, that was the end of that. I had great best friends who loved my eccentric ideas of stories and wanted to try new things and check stuff out. In high school, one of my father's best friends helped start the computer science department at UCLA, and occasionally I would get to go to his house and play on his computers. And I remember that feeling so well, like, this feels so right at the place for me. But I went to Venice High, and I wasn't exactly prepared when I showed up for Harvard at age 17. I'd never set foot on the East Coast in my life. And so I didn't continue with coding at that time, because I just felt too insecure and too underprepared. And it took me a little bit to come back to it, but I think about that journey, because I went into print journalism and I did photography, and I actually spent my senior year at Harvard. I got a grant from Radcliffe, and I came back to Venice, if people know Venice from Mar Vista, and I hung out with a Chicano gang, and I photographed and I wrote about them. And at that moment, going and hanging out with the gang members in the housing projects was actually, I kind of understood their culture better than I understood the Harvard culture. I mean, I wouldn't say that that's long past, but I did, and so they accepted me and they let me in to take this extraordinary journey, and that ended up getting the department award, and it was published, and kickstarted my journalism career. And sometimes, when I thought about it, like, gosh, if I'd known that MIT had even a media lab like situation, if I'd known about that, I would have applied like crazy, right? But if I hadn't gone the journey that I went on, which is to really try to tell the story of people and people's lives and their concerns and needs, and I love investigative journalism, and I did a documentary about a gay father who was wrongfully accused of child abuse, and trying to help the underdogs, all those things that I really learned to understand through the path I did take, I hope is something that has served me well in trying to shape the way we think about these storytelling in VR.
Okay, so what you felt, obviously early on, was that in order to create this connection in the story, or with the individuals that are affected by the story, you felt that going to this other medium was a way to do that, perhaps even a better way to do it. When did you have that epiphany, or was that an epiphany?
Oh, 1000%. And I have to give credit to Howard Rheingold for that book, Virtual Reality. I read that book and was like, this is what I want to do with my life. I just didn't know how to do it, because as I said, I dropped out of coding, but or not dropped out. I didn't pursue it, even though freshman year we had to all take basic, and I was teaching all my friends, but I should have pursued it. But everybody kept saying, oh, taking the coding classes is so hard. And I was like, oh, I'm underprepared. But that when I read that book, I knew somehow, some way. I taught myself HTML in the 90s and started making web pages, some simple HTML coding. And then slowly but surely, immersed myself more and more in what was the knowledge that I needed to start making pieces.
Well, certainly.
Thank God for YouTube, right? Thank God for YouTube. What I'm sure many of us have learned a lot from YouTube education too, right?
Now, before we leave this, what about your parents? Did they do anything special to help you get launched in this direction, in terms of the way you think, the way?
So, my father's an interesting character as an artist. So, I remember in junior high, I got a note home from a teacher, and it said, Nonny did this, that, and the other. And my father flipped it over and wrote, well, she tells me you do this, that, and the other, and sent it back to school with me. So questioning authority was sort of ingrained in the house, right? And I should say that was the case on one hand, but the other hand, getting approval from my father was impossible, just impossible. He never, when I decided to apply to college, university, it was because a boyfriend I had told me that I should. And that's how I ended up applying to Harvard, just out of literally a boyfriend said, you're reading Brothers Karamazov, you should be applying to Harvard. And so I did, right? I just did, and not really knowing. And my dad never looked up from the table when I told him. But I have to say, my father was so difficult to approve. When I put him in Hunger in LA, that was the first time he took off the goggles, and the first time I've ever had my father say to me, wow, what you've just done is absolutely groundbreaking. So that was kind of great. I think, for to get your parents' approval is ridiculously it's ridiculously important somehow.
Yeah.
And my mom is very, very sweet and nurturing. She's a very classic, Mexican American mother, cute, sweet, family together, tamale making it, in the holidays we used to always do together. But she, it's a new field, and I think it's been more difficult for her to really grasp what we've done. But that was a big moment for me when my dad just said, I didn't make Hunger for that, but I have to say it was pretty great. Ridiculous, but great.
Wow. So let's ask the audience, sort of ask you a question. Has there been any defining moment that you've had with parents or people in your childhood that brought you to the point where you basically had, an opportunity, or you were willing to take the risk to explore? Let's sort of hear from you to see what you might have. Take maybe one or two examples.
All right, hit the raise hand button in the lower right corner, and let's see. All right, Jean, you're on, VR girl.
Hi. I had wonderful parents. My mother was a retired school teacher, so education was important. I grew up wishing to be a news reporter at age 12, and my mom was very supportive of that. My dad was a bit of a news junkie. He always watched a lot of TV news, so I had an enormous amount of support. And I did go on and become a TV news reporter for like 13 years. And
Wow.
after that, I did documentaries and things like that. So now I work in education, but having their support does make a big difference.
Wow, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Others have another one. You have another one, Lori?
Tracy. Yep, Tracy. Tracy, you're
Tracy.
on.
Yeah.
Tracy.
Hi.
Where's Tracy?
Hi. Yeah.
Hi, Tracy.
Can you see me?
Back in the
Tracy.
corner.
Yes,
Oh yeah, there you
yeah.
go. Okay, there you are, Tracy. Okay.
She's in the comfy
yeah.
chairs.
Yeah.
I actually am sat in a very comfortable chair at the moment. So when I was 19, I also have very, very supportive parents. And when I was 19, just to put it in perspective, I was living in Manchester, England. And at 19, I said to my parents, "Oh, I'm going to Hong Kong to start a business." And my parents looked at me and said, "Pardon?"
Wow.
And a few weeks later, I left the UK, went to Hong Kong, and stayed there for 7 years, and then really never came back to the UK for 30 years. So
Mm.
it was, yeah, but very
Wow.
supportive. But these were the days when you had to write a letter.
Wow,
Yeah, and
fantastic.
now I speak to my mum in VR, and she's 85.
Wow.
Fantastic. Okay. Well,
Thank
Nonny,
you.
thank you. Thanks for sharing those. So Nonny, back to you. You've had a chance to have amazing experiences just in the process of doing your journalism and your storytelling, and tell us what you think makes the difference of having an immersive environment in which to tell the story. What is really happening there, do you believe?
Well, the world is not flat, right? I mean, we live in a dimensionalized space. We understand the world in an embodied way. So it completely makes sense that an embodied story like anything, it's got to be done well, but an embodied story can be more impactful than a flat or 2D story. This doesn't mean that we know that, audio and podcasts are bigger than ever, right? So it's not as if radio has gone away, but I do feel that this new medium affords a storytelling basically like a palette that is much more akin to the way that we experience the world. And because of that, it's going to provide some really extraordinary, experiences, both fictional and non-fictional. And we're just barely getting started.
To me, one of the things that, of course, I probably had my head into VR longer than anybody else on the planet. Continuously. Let me put it that way. Been working on VR since 1966.
Amazing.
But one of the things I have to say, Nonny, that when the New York Times did their special project where they sent out the cardboards, Google cardboards,
Yep.
and had these experiences, I was blown away about the difference it made in me. I remember one, I think I mentioned to it when we had our little our Zoom call.
Yeah.
I had this experience where there was a food drop in Africa, and the people were,
Yeah.
in an isolated community, were
Yeah.
hungry, they didn't have any food, and we were out in this field. You of course, you probably are a part of all that the New York Times is doing. And so I was standing on the field with them.
That's right.
And looking around and looking at them and emaciated, and the children and the parents all looking up at the sky, waiting for the airplane to fly over to drop food. Somehow they knew it was going to be happening. So I was there standing with them, looking up, and then the airplane flew over and the food was dropped, and everybody's running around to go to these food containers. And, to me, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I mean, I could have watched a TV program about it, but this was entirely different. The fact that I was there, the idea of presence with other people, that you're in the same space that they are. And that's sort of like what you were talking about with the person in the food line.
So that was
yeah.
that was filmmaking done by a woman named Marcelle Hopkins, who still, if you look at her work, continues in this field. Those cardboard viewers, I think you'll enjoy the history of those. We were actually, once again, I would give it credit to a guy named Perry Hoberman in the same lab. We were using the paper cutters to cut up those things and fold them up and getting the lenses. And we had them in these envelopes, and I was asked to come speak at Google, and I handed out the folded viewers to Google. I did a full walkthrough of Hunger, and then I handed out all the cardboard viewers, and then out came Google Cardboard. So like,
what do you know? I didn't know that.
I really have to say Perry Hoberman helped start that whole thing, and then Google and I, we had this big talk about like how they should be with a Sunday morning newspaper, and lo and behold, we got the New York, and that really kickstarted stuff. People really began to, that was sort of the first kind of phase, and obviously now, I'd be curious, how many people here are here on a Quest? Are you on a Quest, Tom?
I am.
What are you wearing?
A
lot of people on Quest.
Yeah.
So that's been
Isn't
a
that
game
amazing?
changer. Do we agree with game changer, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're on this next section, sort of the cardboard viewer to the Quest. And I love the Quest, right? I've happened to have loaned mine out to somebody who hurt her leg and desperate for exercise, so I gave it to her for Beat Saber, to play Beat Saber, so she could work out her upper body, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, right. And so but I have a new one box. I don't have my 2 yet, but I will soon. So I mean, it must be fun for you to see go from the cardboard to the Quest, right, Tom?
Oh gosh, oh yeah. Yeah, of course I was in some of the high-end stuff too before then, and it was clear that the high-end stuff, you had to have, it was expensive to do that. But once the cardboard came, I could actually show VR to other people, and that with their phones, and that was so cool. This is what I keep telling it. This is what I've been working on all these years, and now you
Oh,
can
that's
see it.
so fun. Yeah.
And then of course it got it had a life of its own. So you
Don't
you
let me
have
forget to don't let me forget to talk about Reach.Love because
yes,
also
I'm getting to
important.
that. I want
Oh,
to get to
good.
that. So so one of the things that's clear, we had this amazing we a few of us around the world have had these amazing experiences of being able to go into VR, and that's growing. It's going to take a while, but one of the problems, of course, in telling our story is a lot of people don't have access
Hmm.
to the technology, and this is something that you've talked about a lot, and sort of one of the things that with your entrepreneurial activity of Emblematic, with the trying to develop these kinds of stories that have empathic connections. Um, Tell us now about this other thing, Reach.Love,
Okay,
and
thank
how
you.
that fits in.
I said it. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean we're I would say we're kind of an alpha plus. I think we'll have the beta release out within a couple of months. But what again for the same feeling of like I want make it accessible for anybody to utilize this medium to tell their stories because it can be so powerful. And so we set out to make a no code solution. It's a WebXR solution that lets you use buttons to make volumetric content. By the time we launch it in another couple of months, it'll have the Sketchfab library available embedded into Reach, so you can just grab as much stuff as you want. You can put in animations, there's some lighting effects. We'll be putting in a timeline for transitions. And so it's all built in the web. You can, of course, watch it on the web, or you can watch it in VR, or you can watch it on your phone. And not only that, but when it publishes the URL. So you can literally embed it like an iframe code, the way you embed a YouTube video. But now people can, move through the space without having to go to a walled garden. So if you want to make your story and put it on your website, or you want to control who sees it, or you want to, have a huge distribution, that's the goal of Reach.Love. We've been working on a piece on a kid named Stanley Hayami for the Japanese American National Museum, and Stanley was this amazing kid. He was pulled from high school to one of the camps, and he was an artist and a writer. And we've animated his drawings in Quill, and we've used photogrammetry for a barracks that he basically was living in with his entire family, crammed in this little one-room barrack. And what they would do with those kids is they'd pull them out of the camps, even though their parents were still locked up, and put them on the front line of World War II. So he died about 10 days before the war was announced to be over. And he was just a beautiful thinker. It's an incredible piece, story. And so we've been making the piece on WebXR, and we did a trailer for it. And The Guardian put it in a story they were doing, and it got 45,000 views in 2 days. So that is a kind of distribution that this makes possible. So, it's trying to, once again, democratize how do we do this content? Who's going to tell what story, and how is it going to be your story instead of my story? So Reach.Love.
How did you come up with the name? Tell us about the name.
Reach.Love. So
yeah,
we spent we did one of those things where you spend a long time trying to figure out like your log line or whatever. With a group who does websites and stuff. And so we did the Reach Beyond, Emblematic Group, Reach Beyond, right? That became our log line. So then it just was easy to shorten Reach, and then I started looking for URLs, and Reach.Love wasn't taken. So
all right.
I was lucky enough that I grabbed it, and that's how Reach.Love is become a thing. So if you go to beta.reach.love, you can sign up and start using it kind of now. Know that the timeline and other things are coming in a couple of months. But you should get, it can be a tiny bit. I would say it's an alpha plus. So there might be a hiccup or two, but we're making stuff with it. In fact, the entire Stanley Hayami story is now going to be in Reach, and we'll be done launching that in January. so I think it'll be the first WebXR narrative. I think.
Wow.
Unless somebody here knows of a WebXR narrative. Does anybody here know of anybody using WebXR to tell stories yet? I think it might be the first one.
Well,
Which would be
Yeah.
kind of cool. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, there are quite a few storytelling odds and ends, and we're telling stories right here in Altspace. But there's Mozilla Hubs is doing some things, but doesn't matter. Could you repeat that URL one more time?
Yeah. It's a little different than Hubs or Altspace because it's asynchronous storytelling with a triggered timeline, right? Versus what we're doing here, which is synchronous experience, right? So it is.
We also have asynchronous storytelling, but doesn't matter. What's the URL?
Beta beta.reach.love. And sorry, one last part of it that distinguishes
yes.
it's meant to be photoreal. Photoreal is the other part of it because that's the journalism piece, right? So but I don't mean to discount any of the storytelling coming out of Altspace either. I know you guys are doing incredible stuff here.
So, Nonny, you've had a lot of recognition. Certainly, award winnings. You've run so many different awards and recognized in your role for having been. I think you're recognized by one of 13 most creative people in 1 year. I don't know if that's a proper title, but
it was what help make the world more creative, and I think that's
yes, that's it. That was it. Yes.
Once again, it all comes into the thing of trying to help make the world more creative for other people too. Go on.
So how? Well, I know that's okay. I mean, and I'm wondering about how this affects you. We awarded to you the Nextant Prize, which is sort of like our Nobel Prize, and back in 2017. And but how does that make you feel? And I know that this is one of those things. That this is sort of an awkward question, but how do you keep your humility with even though you have all of this recognition?
I don't know. The imposter syndrome rages within.
Yes.
And that makes it easier to, I listen. I'm so grateful for awards like the Nextant. It's been. I hope what that does is offer a recognition to a field that's just emerging, and I'm hoping that that kind of thing allows me to kind of continue having leadership that paves the way for other creators to come in and work on stuff as well. Anyway, I don't think my husband would ever let me get a big head.
The same is true with my wife. I guess we need to have our companions that do that, don't they?
I know.
Oh, that's
I
wonderful.
know.
But you are a wonderful, generous, and a warm and embracing person. And let me ask you this question. Then we sort of turn it over for the audience. Okay, so where do we go from here? What do you think are the main things we should be concentrating on to have this medium grow to the point where it really is a way for us to have a true reality show that connects with us? What do you think?
Well, I think what we're doing here is absolutely wonderful, right? I think that what we recognize in the same way that I was trying to do, photoreal asynchronous WebXR. But this is it's like different colors and of the same, I don't know, cloth or whatever, different threads of the same cloth. Maybe that's a better metaphor. I'm not very good at those, obviously. But the point being that this is part of the same trajectory. What we're doing, gathering here, meeting here, having conversations here, hanging out here. Gosh, why am I forgetting Ian's last name? Who's a writer, covers a lot of VR stuff. We met here in Altspace quite a while ago. And we'd kind of been, a little bit, I don't know what, maybe he kind of didn't know, or maybe he thought that maybe I would have a big head. I don't know what. We came here in Altspace and we sat down in an event like this and we got on like the house on fire, and we've been really friendly since.
Mhm.
It changed our relationship to come into Altspace and hang out. So, I
Mhm.
think that we're going to continue to use these kind of spaces, what they're going to look like, and how, like the new HP headset that's going to have mouth tracking and eye gaze, and
Mhm.
how much more photoreal are we going to want to be or not photoreal, right?
Mhm.
Plenty of room for furries, right? So I mean, really, so
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on what you want to do. I just happen to come from a really such a straight journalism background that I tend to go for the more documentary or photoreal style, but not completely. We built that crazy. I think we had the video of the crazy fashion show.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yes. I don't think we had it loaded in, but this is amazing. Tell everyone about this fashion show.
Okay, no worries. So we were hired by a company called GCDS, which is a major Italian fashion brand. And they couldn't go to Milan Fashion Week, right, because of COVID. So we used Unreal to do virtual production, which is the reason why I'm bringing this up, is I think virtual production is going to also have a
Mhm.
huge amount of value in the way that
Mhm.
we make things. And we created this crazy out of the world thing. And the characters were all CG characters, but the clothing,
Mhm.
we took their patterns and we brought them into Marvelous Designer, and then created Olympic animations of the clothing in Marvelous Designer. And then the characters themselves, the models on the catwalk, had to have the same animations, although it didn't always match perfectly. And so there was a lot of hand touch up on frames. It was crazy hard. But then we had virtual cameras and virtual lighting, and then we rendered out their fashion show. So you can look it up on, the GCDS fashion show on YouTube
Mhm.
for this year. But the quality is stunning.
It
The
is
quality of the fabric
breathtaking.
in Marvelous Designer, and seeing all the stuff rendered out, with had a couple professional cinematographers, starts of cinematography, finished by a wonderful guy named Deepak Chetty, who is in Austin, if anybody knows him. That guy saved our life to get us over the finish line. Oh, Deepak. So I really he was just a wonderful human being. And like any of these things, right? The collaboration is so intense. We fried one of our computers trying to render that stuff out, that I can tell you. Now, that was a
Literally fried it.
$7,800 machine.
Ooh.
Dead. Yeah, dead doing that project.
Went up in
But what
smoke.
I pointed, but yeah, the liquid coolant leak
Cooling.
fried the motherboard. It just busted. It just got too hot. The coolant leaked and fried the motherboard. But anyway, the point I'm making is that the WebXR simple platform and the high production value virtual production, they're part of the same continuum.
Mhm.
Of what it's very clearly the future of the way that we're going to make and experience content.
Wow. Well, thanks for that contribution. I have one more question, and I promise I'll turn it over to the audience. What is the most moving experience or moment that you've had in doing this work and in telling these stories?
It's always such a honor to get to tell somebody else's story, right? And you always treat it with such you want to be careful. you're always going to
Mhm.
make mistake. And I've learned this as somebody who's been interviewed a lot now, that I don't think I've ever had an interview that didn't have one or two mistakes in it. And it's interesting why that is the case. I don't know, but I've seen it more often than not. I would say 90% of the time, like something small, the order of something or something big. But anyway, but that means that when I go to do these pieces, I don't know, they can be really very emotional, and it's a kind of a journey. And I, for that sake, I also say, please, please, please cut journalists some slack. They're working so hard. They're trying to do their best. They're trying to do good work. And they get a lot of grief these days.
Mhm.
But and I know you want me to be specific, and I can tell you, I guess I get really invested the last thing I'm working on. Like right now with Stanley's story, the Hayami piece, I've gone through such a range of emotions with that piece. He was such a brilliant kid, and sometimes I get so angry, and sometimes I get really tearful, and then I'm just working, and then all of a sudden it'll hit me like a avalanche of emotion about what the story I'm working on. So I think that is part of the personal journey. But I also think what always amazes me is when I hear somebody say to me, "Oh, I saw Project Syria and it made me become
Mhm.
a VR journalist," or
Mhm.
maybe start working in VR. When I hear those stories, it actually takes my breath away, because I'm just doing my work, and then all of a sudden I'll find somebody feel that this motivated them to pursue what I think is going to be one of the most valuable careers in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. What a wonderful example and role model you are for all of us in plunging
Please,
yourself.
Tom, look who I'm talking to, Tom. I'm very lucky to be here with you. I really
Bless.
am.
Well, we're related, right? We just established that early on. And we all are related. We're all in this one family, and we want to do good, and plunging ourselves into it wholeheartedly, as you have, and feeling what's going on. And it's not just about the technology. Certainly, that's a minimum part of it. It's really about what we're able to provide to people, that they can grow their experience. Caitlin here is in the audience, and about this whole idea of wonder, how we can provide a sense of wonder to people through this medium, as it's sort of a wonder generator. And so anyhow, it's
for students, right? For students.
Absolutely.
You guys I presume you guys feel as frustrated as I do watching all these poor kids locked into a 2D screen.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're like, oh my God, why can't we reach the school doors and tell them that they can wander through spaces and
right.
I mean, we all agree on that one, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, let's first of all thank Nonny for this, and she's not done yet. We're going to ask for questions that may come from you'll get a chance to again here in a minute. But let's have some questions from the audience that you might have for Nonny.
Caitlin Kraus, you are up. You were
Caitlin.
just talked about. Were your ears burning?
My ears were burning. Surround sound. Wow. Yeah, or surround feeling. Nonny, it's such a joy to get to sit here and listen, and also kind of feel the experiences and go back in time and realize that you were underneath, behind, and through a lot of the experiences that drew us to work in VR in the first place, with storytelling in mind. So just first of all, thank you so much. And I'm really curious about journalism and whether or not any of the people that you've covered and kind of represented their experience, did you ever have a situation where you invited them to wear the headset and kind of embody their own experience in VR as it was designed? I'm just curious about the circle back to the people that you were designing for. And yeah.
Yeah. So I have one person who you know, I think it was kind of difficult for her. She checked it out for a little bit, but she was the person on the bridge who saw Anastasio Hernandez when he was beaten and tasered to death by the Border Patrol.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a difficult thing. She kind of wanted to try it, but it was sort of emotional. And then another person who Daniel Pierce, where we did a piece on LGBTQ homelessness, and he was thrown out by his family for his orientation, right, for who he is. And he really helped us direct, design, everything. But then when it came down to it, he's like, I can't relive that again.
Yeah.
So there were kind of two different things. One person who kind of wanted to try it, but really didn't spend much time in, and the other person, Daniel, otherwise. That's the pieces of volumetric. But more recently, we worked on a series with Lenovo that I co-directed with Erica Barraza, if anybody knows Erica, and I brought her on to come work with me on this. It's been really, really fun. It was a 10-part series, and we did 3 of 360 films on teenage female activists, and one of them was one in Brazil, one in Mexico, one in the US, for the 3 we did, and they certainly put on the headset and watched their own films, and were very the Brazilian one, the cinematographers there, they're all good, but the Brazilian cinematographers managed to capture this extraordinary scene with classic. It's not classic, actually. We all know about the train that comes off the screen. Well, they managed to do that in 360 in a way that I think is just unbelievably powerful. And so our Brazilian artist was particularly, she's had such a rough life. But the cinematographers who shot some of the material on that were just extraordinary.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I know some of the experiences are difficult, but maybe they could be somehow empowering, or just seeing that they're lifting up to inspire others towards social change.
These are people who really want their stories told. Like another one is Kia on domestic violence, and the sisters don't ever want to hear what happened again, but boy, do they want that story out there.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank
Another
you,
question.
Caitlin. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
the
Caitlin.
opportunity for not only just experience but empathy is just beautiful on here. I just love it. All right, Dr. Angelina Dayton, you're up.
Hi, we got to have Robert Hernandez from the USC Journalism School come and speak at our Students in VR conference, and he said, if you don't know Nonny de la Peña, get to know her. And so he gave a good plug for you when he was speaking at our conference.
That's nice, Robert.
And we have a lot of students involved in Students in VR, and we try to get them to understand how to become informed content consumers, but also to become responsible content creators. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on, as we give these tools to individuals, especially in some of the schools that we deal with cyberbullying, and the tools can be used for harm sometimes. How do you encourage people to be responsible content creators?
So I think it's a really, really important question, because we know that posters are used for propaganda, radio's been used for fake stuff. We know that. Think of the films that were done in Nazi Germany that were complete propaganda, right? So this is nothing new. We know this medium is going to be used for purposes that we think are detrimental and destructive. We know that. So the number one thing I think, even before you start thinking about what you're going to create, is how do you get critical about what that means? What's the critical view that you can have about how content has been created in the past, so you can start using that as a lens to think about what you're going to make in the future, to understand what that kind of propaganda is, or how it was utilized in the past, can make you reflect more about what you're going to make in the future. I think that's really important. And I mean, I sometimes I try to make a joke about it too, because you know, you have to, when you, like the Rosetta Stone, right? That was a tax collection document, right? So, like, you know, even our taxes are going to be collected in VR. So you know, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. But how do we make sure that our students understand what's happened in the past, so that they can use that as a lens to look at what they're going to create in the future?
Wonderful. All right. You ready for more?
You bet. Sure. Keep it coming.
All right. Okay. Verity, you're up.
Hi there. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for today. I am just confirming that I can speak. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you. Where are you, Verity?
I'm
in Bristol, in the UK. Oh, and over here. Hello, I'm kind of blue and green over here.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Nice to see you. I wonder what your thoughts. I'm finding a lot of very conflicting opinions about whether kind of simulating unsafe and dangerous environments and behaviors is a virtue of VR, because effectively it's notionally a bodily safe environment in which to simulate these situations, or whether it's such an embodied experience that it's kind of becoming an irresponsible practice. It's akin to trauma. I wonder if you have any thoughts about what our responsible position can be on that.
Yeah, 1000%. So, early days, and we never, I wish I could go back to him actually, because I think now would be a time that we could do this, but there was a fellow who was running a program trying to save the environment in the war in the Congo. And he was taking people into the Congo to work on this. So this is a pretty risky situation. And he felt like he could not train people properly. That they were always going there, some naive at a point that it was always very risky. And he felt that if he could use a tool that would put him in a much more realistic situation like VR, you know, there would be it'd be very, very useful, to say the least. It could save lives, right? We know that with surgeons, we see all the stuff with UCLA's work, that being able to use VR for training, it's really very helpful. I mean, there's a lot of studies on that now. Okay, so we know that, like, to put somebody through a weird surgery in VR is, you know, much better than a real life. That said, when does a story become, you know, we talk about, you know, the way the press might pick a video of an incident in the African American community and play it many times, right? Where they might not in a white community, right? But I think that those are the kind of lessons that we're just becoming more attuned to really recently, which is crazy. But those are the kind of things that we need to utilize those real world examinations and think about physical, you know, or rather the physical world examinations, and how we might bring the lessons they're learning into the virtual world. And now what you're saying about, like, being embodied, embodiment being more powerful, and therefore could it be more traumatizing? You have to have warnings. In Hunger in LA, we told everybody before they put the headset on, a man passes out, he has diabetes, and I had people say to me, you know, oh no, I watched somebody pass out. I can't do this. And you know, in journalism, we put up our warnings. This has some kind of graphic content, and you know, that is right now, I think, the only best practice that we have available to us at the moment. I'm really hoping that as we start to examine this more closely in the physical world, that we're going to have better tools, you know, that to deal with traumatizing issues. I'll be honest with you, one of the things that made me nervous was in Hunger, where this man collapses in a diabetic coma, and people would come up and like kneel down and try to talk to him. And we couldn't believe the reaction of people.
Wow.
But the reactions in which people backed away and tried to get away from the seizure victim, those were the ones that made me more nervous. A, because it's traumatizing, but B, what does it mean to not want to be involved? Does it mean they don't care? Like what does that actually mean? Are they getting traumatized? Is it because they feel less for another person? And I think that that's a really important question that we should be studying when we're making these pieces. Because I don't know if we have the answers yet.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much.
Great. Now, do we have time for 2 more questions, or because we're 2 minutes past the event?
Yep. Let me show a couple of closing slides, and then
Okay.
we'll take it as long as we can after that, as long as Nonny is willing to stay with us.
Okay.
So, Mark, can you advance the slides? Yeah, here we have. Just wanted to remind you that we do have another Fireside coming up in 2 weeks with the Look Club. You mentioned Erica Raza. She's going to be with us and with her team, with her companions, all three. I'm going to be overwhelmed with all these incredible women here. I'm going to be completely in over my head. And so if you want to have some good comic relief, come to that one, because you'll see me completely dumbfounded and probably humiliated by these great women. But then, so that's coming up in 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to have 2 things happening. Let's back up a second to the previous slide. If you can do that. Yes. We're going to have a workshop for the volunteers in the Virtual World Society. Caitlin is chairing this. Caitlin, again, thank you for doing this. This will be at 11 a.m. and on the same day. And then this is going to be a wonderful. Do you want to just take a few seconds and say what that's about, Caitlin?
Yeah, I think it really ties in nicely with what we've talked about tonight, today.
Hang on a second, Caitlin. Caitlin, let's make sure that everybody can hear you in the entire event space.
Aha,
So,
amplify.
And
okay.
you have on air?
Oh, go on air. Okay.
Yes, make sure you're on air. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I think that really community and connection. The workshop in December is about capacities for wonder, for collaboration, for empathy, because we at Virtual World Society, there are over 1,000 members. And sometimes I think people are looking at storytelling and engagement in new ways and want to meet each other, talk about some of the programs that are coming up in 2021, and also just get together and enjoy. Really having a capacity for wonder is a skill set. So I'm going to introduce some exercises that are about empathy and connection, and we're going to get in and just play together starting at 11. So if you want to sign up, it would be really great, because I know sometimes there's a lot of people who kind of float around in VR, and Burning Man was a great example. In August, people found each other and said, "Oh, I'm making this. Do you want to help with this project?" So a lot of what we're going to do is talk about projects and ways to engage in 2021. And now I have this great site of Nonny's that I want to look up and also use as a platform for engagement and story building. So thank you. And if you want to come, the sign-up sheet is on the website. It's live, so you can register. It's free, and you'll be taking away a lot of tools for collaboration in VR.
Thank you, Caitlin. And then our next slide is what's going to happen immediately after that. We're going to celebrate with our winter gathering event. This is a party where I don't know if we're going to throw snowballs or whatever will happen, but this is during our regular time at 1 o'clock, 4 weeks from now, we will be doing this winter gathering event. So it should be a wonderful time. We're going to have our friends, educators in VR, who have been facilitating all of this. We have to thank them again. Thank Laurel and Donna and Mark for all that you guys have done. Matt, who's up there and hanging up and taking movies of this. So plan to come to that as well. It should be a wonderful thing. Next slide. Yeah. So now this is Nonny's slide. If you want to contact her.
Oh, you should contact me not at Nonny DLP because unfortunately that one became very inundated. Nonny at emblematiccgroup.com.
Okay. Got that?
Or even better, Nonny at Reach.Love. Nonny at
All right.
Reach.love.
That's a better one. Nonny
Yeah,
at Reach.Love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best one now. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, Nonny, thanks so much for that.
All right,
So
sure.
let's thank Nonny again for this wonderful time experience we've had here. It'll live on forever. It's in our archives. And you're going to be back hopefully soon. And
Yeah, I
we'll
hope
have
so too.
maybe some good examples of your stuff and teach us more.
Thank you so much.
And we really need you to be a part of our family, and of course you already are. And
But no, I'd love to come. Hopefully, I'll be able to have some time to come again soon. It's really been
Wonderful.
fun here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Really.